Welcome, everyone. Let us go into a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, truly we thank you for life. We thank you for giving us life. But we thank you, dear Lord, for giving us this North Lawndale community and all the concerned people who are here today. We pray, dear Lord, that you will continue to stretch your hand out and bless us. We pray that you will continue to help the community grow. We pray, dear Lord, that all that we do would most of all be pleasing in your sight. To thine be the glory. Look down upon us and bless us. We ask that you bless each of the speakers that are presenting today. And we ask, dear Lord, that we will leave with a host of knowledge that you've given to us. Bless us with your wisdom. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Happy birthday, North Lawndale. The Churches of North Lawndale is our fourth storytelling event. We chose today for this event because of its significance in American history. On August 28, 1953, Emmett Till was lynched in Mississippi. According to Rosa Parks, that was her impetus for refusing to give up her bus seat in Alabama. That led to the Montgomery bus boycott, which gave rise to Dr. King, who, on August 28, 1963, gave his I Have a Dream speech at the March on Washington. We were incorporated, North Lawndale was incorporated into the city in 1869. At that time, we were home to mostly working class Italians, Germans, and Bohemians. In the early 1900s, working class Russian and other Orthodox Jews began moving into the area, and the previous residents began moving out. Does that sound familiar? At one point in our early history, according to one account, we were home to 25% of the city's Jewish population, and with it, many grand Jewish synagogues were built here, such as this one. Beginning in the 1940s, fleeing the Jim Crow South and the overcrowded slums of the South Side, working class blacks began to move into North Lawndale, and they brought their churches with them. We don't know the first black church in North Lawndale, but the first black church in America was named the First Colored Church in Savannah, Georgia, built in 1777 by free and enslaved blacks. It was later renamed the First African Baptist Church in 1822. Throughout America's history, from slavery until today, the black church has been a source of solace and growth for our people. Unfortunately, we don't have speakers tonight for the churches and synagogues of our previous residents during our first 91 years, but we do have speakers for some of our current churches and ministries, Baptist, AME, Catholic, and I believe non-denominational. And so, for the sake of future generations, those ministries are here this evening to share their history in North Lawndale and have those histories included in the 50-year time capsule, which will be sealed later this year. We invite all North Lawndalians, past and present, to share their stories for the capsule, which will be open in the year 2069. We thank Free Spirit Media for recording this and all our past storytelling events for inclusion in that capsule. We extend a thank you to our hosts, Pastor Walter Harris and Carey Tercentenary, AME Church, and all the ministries represented here tonight.
Carey Tercentenary was a historic church from its inception. Tercentenary was in regards to 300 African slaves first brought to this country. And Carey was an archbishop, the 43rd archbishop, consecrated in 1920 in the AME Church. For those who don't know, the AME Church was the first organized black church in the United States of America. And everyone else came later. They don't like to tell that part. But anyway, after that, this church started on the East End. If anybody knows Chicago history, unfortunately, this West End of Chicago was the last bastions of segregation to be broke down in this city. Up until late 60s, early 70s, people still often got beat if they crossed Pulaski Road to the west. And you know they did never really want to allow African Americans in Cicero. But this church went through several expansions. In 1929, Carey had Reverend S.B. Washington, who also helped move this church. Later, after his appointment, was Reverend Gordon, who moved the church to 1033, 1037 South Damon. And finally, after they had served in the auditorium, it had burnt down and they had restored it, by 1949, on Veterans Day, they moved into this institution here, Carey Tercentenary, at 1448 South Homan. And they've been here ever since. And throughout that time, they have grown exponentially at various points in time. One of those great expansion years was between 1957 and 1971 under Reverend Amos' tenure, where they had a youth church. And one of the great products of that youth church currently is our pastor, Reverend Walter Harris. And then there's Vera G. Davis, who's the congressman's wife. There's various other people notable in the west side of Chicago who've educated. Pauline Doyle, who's there. So this community still has a lot of talent all over the Chicagoland area that comes back to help in this community. Then there was in 1972, just before I arrived, as a young student across the street, Reverend McKinley Young, who became Bishop Young a few years ago, and unfortunately passed about 18 months ago, he invited all the neighborhood kids to join the children's choir, no membership required. Well, some of us finally joined, and we've been here ever since. So I've been here almost 45 years of my life. And I was invited by a teacher who was a member here, Dorothy Taylor, who was teaching 3rd grade. She actually invited my sister, and then Mom kind of sent us along with her. And we were staying down here at 1320 South Homan. And then we ended up under the tutelage of Miss Pauline Doyle's mom, who stayed in the next block over here on Douglas Boulevard, who would say, "Beverly, if you don't fill up to it, send the kids on down to church. I got it taken care of." And then she made us not only join the choir with Miss Lavolia Moore, she got us involved in the Ursha board. And we've been participating in the Austin zone for many years. And Carey has done a lot of great things. We had one of the most successful church Ebony youth drives years ago in the 1970s. They used to sell the Ebony magazine, Ebony Junior, Jets like crazy. You know, and we go to the banquet. We had an annual banquet with the Staple Singers. We went to cabaret as a church. A lot of things under Reverend McKinley Young, and it's no wonder later he became a bishop in the AME church. And it was a great time for us to join and be active. They had sewing classes here during these strikes in the late 70s. In the 80s, the teacher strikes was almost every 4th year, every 3rd year. It was a teacher strike. These doors were open because we had teachers here. Other educators, Theodis Leonard, spent over 20 years working over there at Gregory School on Polk and Lawndale, and they even named the library after him. Then I worked with him at Paderewski School when he became a principal. He's a great man. One of the church organizations he worked with for over 30 years is now named after him because of his greatness in Lawndale. Plus, we had the Carey Cardinals. Reverend used to coach for them. I think he played a few years earlier and became a coach working Little League baseball team. The church was active in Garfield Park and Columbus Park and here in Franklin Park. So this church has been very active. Lately, we have done a lot of things since the 1970s and the 1980s, the Carey Cardinals in 1990. We had all these educators, that some of which I missed, but in 1990s under Pastor Basil Foley, Interfaith Organizing Project. It was a group of ministers on the west side trying to keep them from running all the homeowners out at the United Center. And that's when I got my roots in community activism. So if anybody want to know why that cook's so involved, and at that time I had struggled after college and fell off into street life, and I came back in the church, and my pastor put me immediately on the community activities with him. And then at the Faith Organizing, met the great Dr. Griffin over there at First Congregational, Reverend Daniel, a host of other ministers. They had Church of St. Malachi involved, First Church of the Brethren, Reddicoff, and a lot of these pastors got moving 4 or 5 years after this major thrust to see them homeowners. But the homeowners over there, the last 10 that stood out, were able to get $200,000 cash when they left and a new house built. And many of them got houses multi-level where they could rent one unit and make money in the future, and brand new homes along David Avenue. So I came back into the church, changing my life and watching them help change the community for the better. And since then, there's other projects we've done. A community breakfast was started here. It lasted about 23 years, and they gave it up in order to do a food pantry every Friday. In the community breakfast, we were only feeding people twice a month breakfast. Now we help people eat every week throughout the year. And so the church has continued to be active. AA meetings have been started here. 4 or 5 other community groups started here. I have a program, a Hand Up Recovery Home. A lot of the foundations was built right here in this church basement. Mr. Leonard had West Side Association, which was a recreation association that included a lot of education. There's various other leadership that have come out of this church. We stay active. And our pastor, Reverend Harris, is probably the most well-known pastor in this area, because he talks to everybody that walks Holman Avenue, 15th Street, and come down here off 16th Street. And it's a shame that some people been here 20 years, and they know Reverend Harris by name, and he only been back 12 years. And they didn't meet him growing up. Then there's a lot of other people coming back to the church to visit and to the community, because Reverend Harris came back and has made it a staple to help grow this community back up to what it was like when he was a child. And I've been glad to assist, because I came along after that and saw the rest of the fall. And in 1970, I vowed that I wanted to see Little Beirut in Chicago grow back to the beautiful community it once was. And it's a shame it still look like Little Beirut, and we can't blame Donald Trump. But that's a brief history of all that we've been involved in, and there's so much more before another day, another time, and let's keep hope alive.
For 71 years ago, Open Door Church was started by the Reverend Booker Terrell Little. It was Reverend Little's desire to bring about a upward mobile Black Baptist church in this area. And so he, along with 8 others, organized the church in this home in April of 1948. He met in the home until January of 1949, and then they moved into the Holland School, where they had service every Sunday in Holland School from January of 1949 until July. And I mention that because it was a direct desire for them to not ever have church in a storefront. They wanted to give the impression of being upward and mobile, and from the very inception, they had bowling leagues, they had Cub Scout, Girl Scouts, all of those things. Just didn't want to be the run-of-the-mill kind of just have church on Sunday. It was Reverend Little's desire that we would worship God, but that we would also serve mankind. And so in July of 1949, they purchased their first church building at 1539 South Christiana. And they worshiped in that building from 49 until 52. The membership paid off their mortgage and began to grow rapidly. And so in November of 1954, they moved into an old Jewish synagogue on the corner of 13th and Sawyer, 1301 South Sawyer. And under Reverend Little, they did great things. They, like I said, inaugurated their bowling leagues, their Cub Scouts and Girl Scouts, all of this stuff, and inclusive with all of the auxiliaries of National Baptist. So you had Women's Auxiliary with Red Circle Girls and Bible Boys and bugle bands and marchings and all of those things. And they stayed in that building from 1954 until, let me see, when was it? Probably 2006. Let me jump around. Reverend's health became bad in 1980, and or thereabout, and so he relocated to Arizona. Interesting thing about that with his relocating to Arizona, he did not give up as being pastor of the church. And therefore, the associates of the church kept the church afloat. Reverend William Lamar was a member for over 30 years, took over the church and kept things moving along as Reverend was in Arizona. And Reverend probably before the 80s went to Arizona, because I know I came to the church for the first time in 1982. And Reverend hadn't preached consistently for 10 years. And so Reverend Lamar was in charge. In 1984, Reverend Lamar passed away, and I was named the assistant in charge in 1982. Reverend Little passed in April of '84, and in June of 1984, I became the pastor, the second pastor of Great Open Door Church in 71 years of history. And so if there's anything wrong with the church, I must take the full blame for it. But we continue to grow and prosper. In May of 2006 to 2000, well, in the spring of 1998, we broke ground for the community center. I need to tell you that. That sits on the corner of 13th and Kizzy, and it is named after the Reverend Booker Terrell Little. We then tried our best to keep patching up the old Jewish synagogue that we were in, but unlike your building, ours had no basement and no foundation. Jewish synagogues were not built with foundations because they were modeled after the tabernacle, not to be a permanent place, but just a transit place. And so after years of shoring up the sides, it became clear that it was going to fall. And so we made preparation to get out of there. And so we built the community center first in 2006, and we worshiped in that building on Kedzie from 2006 to 2008. We broke ground for the new church in 2006, and after we completed the community center, moved our services into there, and then in May of 2008, we moved into the new building on the same location where the Jewish synagogue was, and that's where we hold services now. It's been a great 36 years actually. I celebrated 35 years as pastor in June. With the building of the community center, we were able to open our doors to the children in the neighborhood. It is a full gym. We host community activities, political meetings for the congressman, et cetera, so forth. So it's a great congregation. One of the bragging facts, you talked about school, and when the school would go on strike, there are many Chicago public school teachers that are members of the congregation. One of them happened to excel and became the chief operating officer of the Chicago public school system. Ms. Denise Little is a member, and she is still the administrative clerk of the church. And so God has blessed us with the wherewithal to do quite a few things and to enhance the life of the children in this North Lawndale area. Our motto is remained the same from its inception. We worship God, but we give service to mankind, and we're proud to do it.
As you know, I am Reverend Georgetta Glover, the pastor of Greater St. Paul AME Church, 4236 West Cermak Road. Come on by. It's an honor to be here to speak to you on this evening. I did not prepare anything, so I'm speaking off the cuff. This year, Greater St. Paul celebrates 95 years in service as a congregation in the African Methodist Episcopal Church and to the Lord Jesus Christ. And so in that celebration, I've learned some things about the congregation. We have a few movers and shakers in our congregation. I have learned that Greater St. Paul, originally, the building itself was the Paul Haas building back when the community was Bohemian. And Paul Haas was burned at the stake as a heretic in the Catholic Church because of his views regarding the Holy Spirit. It didn't connect with the church way back then. And so in that time frame, there have been organizations that agreed with his beliefs, and the building itself was built in honor of him, and one of those organizations began in that building. And it originally was built as a community center. Structure is straight up and down, a whole bunch of stairs, amen. And so in that vein, I have learned that Greater St. Paul has continued to open its doors to the community. And there have been many organizations that have come to Greater St. Paul for their community meetings. The 21st Street Block Club, North Lawndale Renewal for Community Change. Did I get that one right? Amen. And the Triangle Garden Community organization has had their meetings within our doors. The new senior building that was just recently built, the contractors, under the guidance of Bobby Still at the time, met at Greater St. Paul when they were beginning to form and organize the plans and the things for building that senior building. So we have a great community standing, and one of the things I noticed that whatever happens around the church, and some things have really happened in the community, the people do look out for the church, and that is truly a blessing. We have Miss Lenore Mitchell, who has been one of the great organizers in the community, is a member of Greater St. Paul and a great evangelist. Any given time, you may see her walking up and down the street, anointing the block, literally anointing the block with oil. Amen. And so we're grateful to have her there. Greater St. Paul moved into that location in the early 60s. I was but a gleam in my parents' eye at the time, and so they have been there for pretty much all of my life, I would say, which is over 55 years in that location. I don't know what else I could tell you. I should bring Brother Cook back up here because he could tell a whole lot about North Lawndale and its connections with Greater St. Paul AME Church. Brother Norrington has been a blessing in coming to the church and bringing the historical, North Lawndale Historical Society to come also to meet within the walls of Greater St. Paul. And so if I do a public service announcement, if you need a space for a community meeting, the doors of Greater St. Paul are open unto you. We don't charge anything. All we ask is if you bring stuff in, clean it out when you leave. Amen. It's been an honor to be a pastor in this area as I've learned more about the families of North Lawndale, and truly North Lawndale, I have discovered, is a great family. And it's a great love and a great care that you show for each and every person that comes across your doors. One of the things that I recently discovered as I polled my congregation is I asked them, why did you come to Greater St. Paul and why did you stay? And many of them said they came because of the music. And perhaps that was Brother Norrington's mother playing the piano back at that time. They said the music sounded like it sounded to them back home in Mississippi or Arkansas or wherever they came from in that area. And they liked it, so they stayed. And they came and they stayed, they said, because it offered services for my children. And I find that the North Lawndale community does offer services for its children. And so we just are grateful to be a part of that. I don't know if I've helped in this endeavor, but anyway, if you come to Greater St. Paul, you'll find a plaque down in the basement, and it says Pauline Norrington, memorial room. And when you come, you just look around and find it. That'll give you an opportunity to go up and down the stairs. One of the things that was recently discovered with the pastor that was just before me, Reverend Cynthia Johnson, is that the organization, as I told you about, the Paul Hoss Society, a lot of their artifacts, when they sold the building to the AME Church, were still in the attics of the church and are still there. And Greater St. Paul building is on the National Register of Historical Buildings, National Register of Historical Buildings. And so a lot of those artifacts are still there. So if you come by and visit, we'll be glad to show them to you and also give you a tour of this great edifice and meet the wonderful people. Thank you.
You know, God called me to ministry in 1987 in Kansas City. And I was just this little hard-headed kid. And I knew that God called me to work with young people because of what I did not understand what God was like when I was a young person, going to church and experiencing churchianity versus real Christianity. And from that point on, I knew God called me to ministry. And I was doing this stuff in juvenile detention centers. And Emmanuel Cleaver, who was the mayor pro temp of the city at that time, married my wife and I, said, Phil, God called you to ministry with kids. I'm like, dude, I don't work with kids. I mean, that's not pastoral work. And he just walked me through that, man. He's been a great friend ever since. And so that's caused this journey of what God has led me to do to work with young people from 13 to 25, 29, to bring me to Chicago. I worked with 2 churches in Kansas City, church that Tracy Worthy and I and our families were at. And we moved to Chicago in 94 to serve as a youth pastor at Lawndale Community Church. And when my mom grew up in Chicago, went to Roosevelt University, moved to the suburb, she lived in the suburb, lived at River Forest or whatever, went to Oak Park, River Forest, went to Roosevelt, moved to Kansas City. And so it was almost like home for me anyway. So when I was here, I was like, yo, Kansas City didn't understand me. Sometimes I wonder if Chicago folks still do, but in Chicago, it felt like folks understood me more in light of ministry. And Lawndale specifically because it was about both hand and heart. And so I felt at home there, working with young people, doing some crazy stuff with young people. But really what I really tell people about all the time in North Lawndale, and as much as I brag about the West Side and talk about it, is the people. We got buildings, we got churches, we got 100 and some odd churches in North Lawndale, right? But it is the people, and that is why we're even in this room. The people of North Lawndale love their community. It's only maybe 3%, maybe 4% of people shooting everybody. It's 98% of people trying to go to school, trying to work, and love on folks every day. So as I was serving at Lawndale Community Church as a youth pastor, and Pastor Joe was there, and started Hope House in 95, and we did all these crazy things with young people, and we would have different concerts, different hip-hop concerts. You know, I wrote a book called The Hip Hop Church, trying to help the church understand the culture, and we had different concerts, and young people would come. And the young people said, I asked them, I said, what would a church be like if you were going to have some friends come? What would it not have to have? First, it can't have a bunch of announcements. We can't have a bunch of announcements. That's boring. All right, cool, I got you. You know, we got to have music, we got to have stuff. We got to be up and moving around. It can't just be a bunch of talking heads. So we formed, in 03, The House, Christ-centered hip-hop worship service. Very first service, we had 500 kids come out. It was crazy. We did a Wednesday night service as a test run. Like 150 kids came out. I was like, yo, this is crazy. We had no food. It wasn't like coming out for the food. It was just coming out for the hype. 500 kids came out every first Saturday of the month for several years. And our young people said, we want to do this every Saturday. We want to do this on a regular basis. But we also want to find where we can do the arts at every day. Because we were doing makeshift art in the church. We had a couple of rooms, we did a video class, we did a visual art class, we did some cooking, but we didn't have a place that could happen on a regular basis. And what I noticed as we were doing various things in the arts, as still we were doing our stuff with hip hop, there's some of the kids who are on the fringes of church, fringes of God, were coming through. It was crazy. It was so many crazy fights and situations. And I was like, yo, this is exactly where God got us to be. And as that opened up crazy doors with the young people that we were working with, the opportunity for this firehouse came to be. The fire department left in 04, and we began to pursue in like 05, 06, when we can actually get this building. It was in the city's black hole of general services. Like, it's like a bag, and it's the black hole of general services. And Mary Bonhomme was good friends with LCDC, and my wife, especially Kim Jackson, and then Kim became executive director of London Christian Development Corporation after Richard went to teach. the team just rallied around us trying to figure out how to get this built. I don't know nothing about no real estate, how to get into real estate. My wife's done this for a bunch of years. We're married 35 years, so at least 30 of those years she's been doing real estate. And so she knew the right button to press, and the alderman at that time, she didn't really know how to, Sharon Dixon, how to get a building. So she said, show me what to do. So we did the best we could to show her, and she'd had to do the rest. We didn't pay $300,000, but we didn't pay $1. That's what we were designed to pay. So we paid about $76,000 through the support of Lawndale Church and others. We got that building, man. And the first day, December 17th of 2007, me, Cello from off the block, and Buck from off the block cut the lock and went in there. We didn't know nothing about construction in a cold building and started tearing down walls. Yeah, you think that should be torn down? Let's tear that down. Yeah. Oh, we probably shouldn't have tore that down. Stop. Let's just stop right there. Let's just stop, right? And so we began to tap on the shoulders of people who just God put in front of us. An architect designed all the drawings, like $15,000 worth of drawings he just designed for us, right? He forgot the plumbing plans, but that was a whole nother conversation. There's a whole nother conversation about that. We had another architect fix all that kind of stuff up. But Mr. Adams and several other people, Drew Goldsmith, gave of his time as a GC. John Bonds gave of their time as a GC to kind of put their name and stamp on it as we had other subs to do the work. Young people came in, young people time after time came in. And what's crazy is I'm not going to stop doing program with young people because the building ain't got a bathroom. So in the summer of '08, we had 20 kids in that, but we took all the asbestos out. So there was no harm to anyone, because I know somebody gonna say something. All the stuff was out, and kids were in there painting, and the murals you see on the front of the building were done by 20 young people and a guy named Damon Lamar, who's a phenomenal artist. And they painted that. And every year we had a room done, we did work in that room. We got this done, and we made that happen. And gradually by 2009, 2010, we had a lot of movement with rooms and spaces to go. We just got some resources. We're going to finish the basement. We have 7 different disciplines we're trying to engage in. 4 of them are pretty active, and the 7 are dance, technology, culinary arts, fashion, visual arts, audio engineering, and film. In the summers, we have 150 kids are there for thereabouts a day. And that's during the day, and then we have some kids in the evening time after school. Open to anybody. There's no fee. We're looking at different things we're trying to do that may be just a little fee if you can afford it, and just kind of navigate it from there, just to put some value to it. But we've also partnered with Arnie Duncan to create our violence interruption work, right? And we've been doing this work with 20 some odd people 20 some odd volunteers before any of them got hired to do some of this kind of work as well, and just grabbing guys off the block who we knew from people that y'all knew if I said their names from off the block, to other folks who were involved, and advocating for them to show them that they are the kings that they are meant to be, and to walk with them. And it's been about 50 or 60 young men we've worked with, planning another 60 this year. And now we moved from me and a maintenance person that was part-time, that I was paying partially out of my savings account, to 15 staff. That's crazy, right? It's crazy, right? And so pretty soon, hopefully this summer, you'll see some new concrete in the front of the building and some trees. We're going to put some grass right there so that people can't just drive up in there anymore, and being able to kind of beautify that spot. And we're doing some more things. We're trying to catering company, Firehouse Catering, featuring Sweet Baby Ray's Barbecue. Dave Raymond from Sweet Baby Ray's loves what we're trying to do, and so he's been very involved. He helped us get a smoker in the kitchen. You are welcome anytime to come out and visit. But my passion is to see our young people shine in North Lawndale. That's my passion, you know? And I know young people in North Lawndale with all the history that Paul knows as well, including the pastor who is a young person as well in this ministry, as well as Paul, are representatives of young people, and these young men and women seeing their own strength and stepping into that. And so I don't want to see our young people not see their own strength. And so I'll live and die loving on young people in that capacity. We still do some hip-hop stuff and concerts and hip-hop revival we had with the Art Fest in Douglas Park this year. We've had Curtis Blow trying to get Chuck D and some other people to come through. Chance, Lupe, the other folks have come through. But being able to expand all that we're trying to do in that art center, you're welcome to come through, help us be involved in whatever facet you can. But I'm thankful to be in ministry. As we look at ministry in our work, right, even at Lawndale Church, as a parish model. That is, every young person, I believe, in North Lawndale, I'm responsible to find a way to shine the light of Christ in their life. And the arts is what we try to do. So vision would be to transform the lives of youth and young adults in the arts within a faith community. And that's what we seek to try to do every day.
Well, actually, I grew up in Lawndale all my life, 61 years here. Went to Penn School, 16th Averys, went to Farragut High School. I used to play the saxophone from 3rd grade through 8th grade. When I got to Farragut, they didn't have an instrument for me, so I got into the male chorus. So when I got in the male chorus, we started a 5-man male vocal singing group. You know, we all of us went to Penn School, and all of us went to Farragut High School, and we started winning all the talent shows at Farragut High School, and then we ended up made a vow, a commitment that we're going to stay together after high school, and we stayed together for maybe 20-something years. The name of our group was called Superior Movement. I got a story right here. I wrote a book. It's called A Dream, a Goal, Never a Reality. But actually, it was a reality in a sense because, I mean, every time the celebrities come to Chicago, they would call us, like James Brown, the Stylistic, the Shy-Lights, Phyllis Hyman, Eddie Murphy. We opened up the show for all of them guys, you know. And then we cut an album in 1985. It's called A Key to My Heart. And it went number 18 on the Billboard charts. You know, it was national. You know, so we did that for a good while. But then things started slowing down, and I started hanging out with some of my co-workers, you know. And one guy in particular, I ain't seen him in 2 or 3 years. I saw him on the street. We just changed phone numbers. The next day, he was at my house. He said, "Hey, man," he said, "it's my birthday to celebrate." You know, so I wasn't a Christian at the time. Let me know that now. So, so we bought some drinks upstairs and some reefer. And by that time, my fiance, who's my wife now, she came in the room, started complaining about the car note need to be paid. And she went out. He said, "What, man, you need some money?" I said, "Yeah. You got some?" He said, "How much you need?" I said, "Lend me $500, and I pay you back every time I get paid." He said, "That's all you want?" I said, "Well, lend me $1,000." You know. So he went to his car. He gave me $1,000 in cash. So now I got my new friend now. You know, I started hanging out. Started hanging out with him. Kind of found he sold drugs. You know, and like when he sold the drug, I never seen him sold drugs, but I know he sold drugs. And like we go to bars, he'll buy all the drinks. They go in the back room, do his thing, and come out, we leave. He'll buy tickets to the Bulls game, to the Bears game. We were just going out. So anyway, one day as I was coming home from work, I was gonna stop by his house to pick some money up to go to the OJ's concerts. And I saw his van over his friend's house, because we was up there a week prior to that watching the NCAA basketball tournament. So I stopped, rang the doorbell, and they said, "Hey, Donnie, your friend here." He came downstairs. As I was going upstairs, he gave me the key to his van and told me to drive. And so I got in the van, but he didn't come to the van. He went to his car downstairs, which I had no idea a car was downstairs waiting for him. Him and this lady was arguing. He gets out the car, and get in the van where I was, told me to give it his bag. It was a Walgreens plastic bag. I said, "No, you give it to her. Y'all arguing and stuff." He said, "Man, just give it to her." So I didn't think he just wanted to be bothered with the girl. So I go and give her this bag, and then obviously he didn't tell me to get no money from her, so I'm gonna give the bag and leave. So I go give her the bag. She doesn't come around. I got in the car. She started counting money. 100, 200, 300. I said, "Well, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to get Donnie." Open up the door, go get him. About 15 policemen with guns to my head. She was the undercover agent. He had sold her 3 times prior to that. They would send him up for the big one. I just walked into it. But he wrote a testimony that had nothing to do with it, so I figured that when we go to court, everything will come out how I got involved. And so we went to court, and I took a bench trial because, a jury trial, because I didn't like the judge, because every time we go to court for like 6, 7 months, they call me and Donnie up in front of the judge, and they'll call continue. And I didn't know what continue was, you know, I just know that I'm just trying to get out of here. I'm trying to get my life back together. And so finally one day they called Donnie up, he plea bargained, he got 10 years. Then they called me up and asked me why I want a bench or a jury. I said, "Give me a jury." I said, "Civilized people here, I got involved, they let me go." So my lawyer asked the undercover agent, "Have you ever seen Stanley prior to the day of this incident?" She said, "No." He said, "We ain't got in the car with any conversation about drugs or money?" She said, "No." He said, when he was counting money, did he reach for the money?" She said, "No." Then they tried to introduce our testimony that I had nothing to do with it. They called it a sidebar. And they said it can be allowed in court. You know, and the state prosecutor, his opening statement and closing statement was the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, that young man over there, Stanley Ratliff, he responsible for bringing drugs from Columbia to Chicago. You know, and I ain't been out of Chicago in 20-something years. I'm like, how they gonna believe this guy? But they believed him. And again, they ended up giving me 9.5 years in prison. So when I was going to prison, I said, no, I can't believe I was going to prison because I never been arrested for in my life. And so when you went down, I went to Dixon Correctional Center, and they put you in the hospital room, right? And they put four people to a room. Now, I didn't think nobody gonna know me down there, right? So this 6'4" guy came into my room. He said, "Whose name is Stanley?" I said, "My name is Stanley." He said, "The minister wanted to see you." I said, "The minister?" I started talking about the chaplain down there, with Minister Rika, the gang leader, of the vice lord, I didn't know him. So anyway, when I met him, he said, "Do I know this guy, and this guy? Everybody he named I knew from the neighborhood." Then he said, "If you need anything, let me know." I said, "Okay." So as I walked down the hall, I told God, I said, "Lord, I've never been involved in no gangs. I'm not going to be involved in none now. I'm trusting you." And when I did that, God had his hand on my life. He protected me, took care of my family, helped me finish my college degree while I was down there. After 2.5 years, I got clemency from the governor. Give the Lord a hand for it. Come on. And once I got out, my pastor, who was my football coach in high school, Coach Wayne Gordon, he said, "Stanley, what do you think God is calling you to do?" I said, "I believe God want me to help me and not to go back to prison." I said, when I was down there, I seen guys get 3 months, they get out, they come back in. I seen guys get 18 years, 20 years, they didn't get visited like I did. I said, "I want to do something about that." He said, "Okay, cool." He said, "Go find JoJo." JoJo was at a rehab center leading guys with struggling with substance abuse. So I told JoJo about it, and we started praying about starting a Hope House, a home for men. We did about, I think, 1 year or 2 years. How many years we started praying? Maybe we prayed about 2 years before we started it. Yeah. So in 1995, we started a Hope House with 4 guys. And since then, over 6,000 men have been to Hope House getting their lives together. We also started a choir in Hope House. We had about 50 men, man. And, I started training their voices up and everything. And, man, we cut a CD. It's called London Community Church Hope House Men's Choir. But, man, this city is bad, man. It's real nice, But we had fun doing that, And so while I was doing the Hope House thing, my wife was telling me, "Hey, Stanley, let's do something with the children." So we started doing Angel Tree, which is we bought gifts for children whose parents are incarcerated for Christmas. We started out with 50 kids, then we started doing about 1,000 kids every year. We buy gifts for them every Christmas. We put on plays and skits and everything. And then my wife said, "Well, you know what? We need to spend more time with those kids." So then we started Celestial Ministry, and we ended up helping. It wasn't just for the kids whose parents were incarcerated, but it's for any kids in the neighborhood, because a lot of kids, they wanted to be a part of it. And so now we got our own building on 2129 South Drake, and we have another hand, all praise to God. And we have a dance studio, recording studio, and we have a garden down there that we grow vegetables and we give them out to the people in the community. God has been doing amazing things with Celestial Ministry. We just got through doing our summer music camp. We had about 20 kids, and we taught them to music theory, piano, guitar, brass instruments. We took them to different places like the beach and in Franklin Park to swim. We just pour our lives in there for those 6 weeks, And so if you got any kids that you want to be part of Celestial Ministry, it's free. We have a drum line on Saturday from 10 to 12. Our drum line is super. They go all over Chicago playing everywhere. And so it's from ages 8 to 16, I believe. So just send them over to us and we'll take them, okay? And all right. And I'm also the music teacher at St. Malachi School on the west side of Chicago, because I got a heart for music, because I didn't think they trained me well at Farragut High School. I went to Northeastern, and I was dumbfounded. So I said to myself, one day I'm going to take what I learned from here and bring it back to my neighborhood, and I'm doing that right now.
It's an honor to actually be here tonight to be a part of what's going on in North Lawndale. I am not a native North Lawndalian. I am actually a native South Sider. Actually, Stone Temple Church actually moved from the South Side to North Lawndale in 1954. It was a glorious occasion. My grandfather, the founding pastor of Stone Temple, the Reverend James Marcellus Stone, actually, they used to call him, please understand as I say this very lovingly, they used to call him a black Jew, but he had great Jewish friends. And so when he found out that there was a Jewish synagogue being let go for a king's ransom, he immediately said that, "Go west, young man, go west." And so he told his congregation, we're going to move to the west side of the city into an area called North Lawndale. And as you know, during that 1954, the boulevards and everything were just beautiful. And so when he decided to move over, they had to have, in those days, you had to have church meetings to make sure that you were doing what they said and not necessarily what God said. And so there was a church meeting. There was a church meeting because the church that we moved from the south side was known as Sesquicentennial Baptist Church. And so we got ready to come over in July of '54. Earlier in that year, they had a meeting with a young lady named Carey Robinson. And they had a meeting and said, okay, well, we're going to move to the great west side, to North Lawndale. We should have a new name for our church. And Carey Robinson was being a bit sarcastic. And she said, well, you know, because my grandfather had negotiated the sales price with the Jewish congregation, First Romanian Temple. He had paid the money from a mortgage on his house to secure the place. He had basically told all the children that we were going to the west side. And so they had a meeting, and Carey Robinson said, well, what should we call the name of the church? And she said, well, you know, it's Stone's Temple. And so with an apostrophe S. And so so everybody, you know, so even though she was being sarcastic, everybody said, well, that's good. We're going to call it Stone's Temple. All in favor, you know how it goes, aye. And it became Stone's Temple. So actually in 1954, the name of the church actually had an apostrophe S on it. But then because we finally changed it to Stone Temple Missionary Baptist Church without the apostrophe S, because at the end of the day, it was still God's doing. And so Stone Temple became very well known for a lot of things over here in North Lawndale. Several things, its connectedness. First of all, we had a very strong connection with the Jewish community. Second of all, we had a very strong connection with the civil rights movement. Stone Temple on the west side was one of the first churches that allowed Dr. King to come and be a part of what was going on in the civil rights movement. History can be revisionist, but we know that a lot of churches closed their doors to Dr. King because as he was known by the late Mayor Daley, he was a troublemaker. And so they didn't want him in North Lawndale because they felt that the city was already being controlled and it didn't need anybody else. And so preachers that were not bowing down to Mr. Daley would be ostracized. And you know how the city can get when they don't want you to do something. And so they would send inspectors by. But my grandfather, because he had a strong relationship with God and a strong relationship with Dr. King and Daddy King, decided, well, I'll take my chances with God, and Daley can do whatever he wants to do. And so we began setting up meetings at Stone Temple Church with Dr. King. And so, and then eventually, of course, you know, he moved over to over 16th and Hamlin. And so that was a part of our history. But the connectedness was that he also had a lot of friends in the area. One of the churches that we were in relationship with during that time was Friendship with Dr. Shelvin Hall. There's an article in one of the papers when they did an article about Dr. Stone and his relationship with Dr. King. He said, well, I had a meeting, and my friend Shelvin Hall said, I asked who wants to go with us to march, and my friend Shelvin Hall said, well, listen, I'm old enough to die, and I'm young enough to run, and so we're going to go with Stone, but if they start coming after us, we're just going to run real fast. And so he had a great relationship with Shelvin Hall. When Shelvin Hall sold 3411 Friendship Baptist Church and he moved over to Jackson, one of our ministers out of Stone Temple actually took the church over at 3411. When they tore down 3411, it was a kind of a heartbreak to me because you hate to see a historical place go away. So one of the things that happened when I became pastor is we made a decision to make sure that we could uplift the building so that it would always be around. It was a long journey, but we made a decision. Number one, keep the Jewish atmosphere. but at the same time, making sure it was recognized that we're still a Christian church. We never had a conflict because we all understand that Jesus was Jewish, and that so therefore, whatever differences we have were not as big as what we had in common. And so in 2014, the Jewish Federation came to us after we had done some work and said, we'd like to host a Dr. King fellowship at your church. Why did we want to do that? And Pastor Phil was a part of that inaugural moving forward at that, because we understood that the relationship between the Jewish community and the African American community needed to be restored, especially in North Lawndale, because North Lawndale, as everybody has also said, most of the buildings in this area that are churches now were former Jewish synagogues. And most of them are in the book that you'll find on the Jewish synagogue. And so we happened to be one that was chosen. And when they came there, they began to, we began to make it an annual fellowship. And what then happened was we were there one morning, and the Chicago Preservation Committee said, do you want to make this place a landmark? Now, long story, my grandfather did not ever want to make the building a landmark, because when you become a landmark, you get restrictions put on you on what you can do. My grandfather from the old school, nobody here, he liked to use what we call jacklegs. And nobody here knows anything about that, but he liked to use what we call jackleg. And these were because then you could do whatever you want to do when you want to do it. But when they came, we had already done our work, and we did a lot of our work using good jacklegs, because we wanted to make sure that we kept people working in our community. And so, but they came, and we finally got it in 2016, we got the landmark status, and so we are excited about that. In 2018, the National Historical Preservation Committee awarded us a grant for $445,000 to do exterior work on the church. All that being said, that's a lot of exterior thing, but we also have been, also, as I told you, my grandfather had a lot of connectedness, not only with Shelburne Hall, but many of you know, or may not know, Reverend Milton Bronson and Thompson Community Choir, they came out of Stone Temple, and they used to have church in our basement. We have a lot of space, so we allow a lot of churches to come and use our space to have their services, what have you. And people were like, this is really kind of strange that you're having other churches come in your church. And I said, well, there's many members, but there's one body. But understand, I got the historical reference because my grandfather did that with Milton Bronson, and so I understood that dynamic was not strange. And so Milton Bronson came out of the church. Many of you may know a young lady named Mahalia Jackson. She used to spend a lot of time at Stone Temple Church. But those were some good old days. But the new days have been even great as well, because with our relationship with the Jewish community, we've had some many times when we've come together and had dinner and dialogue to try to figure out what is going on in our community and what's going on in the Jewish community and what can we do to make changes. Everybody in this room knows, and your stories have been so phenomenal about the changes that you made, because everybody does their part, and nobody has to be jealous of anybody doing their part, and we all come together and put our parts together as we're doing today and recognize, wow, North Lawndale is some kind of place. Matter of fact, can I just say that again? North Lawndale is some kind of place. I'm going to say it one more time. North Lawndale is some kind of place. And as quiet as it's kept, change is happening every day in every corner. And I forgot who gave the statistic. I think it was Pastor Phil who said that in reality, 98% of the people that live here are grinding every day trying to make it better for everybody else. And that's why you all know this. They would love to have this community for themselves, because there's so much prosperity in the roots of this community. There's the Queen of Romania from this community. Our former mayor, Rahm Emanuel, from his family in this community. It's so many seeds that have been planted. And what we declare, because my wife has been instrumental in doing what we call the Stone Temple Heritage Peace Garden right next to us. If you haven't seen it, please come by. We're growing some fruit. We took a couple of cucumbers out of the garden today to eat as our lunch. because we were hungry. But we talked about it, and she declared, you know what? The garden is a symbol of the growth and the seeds that have been planted that are going to grow out of North Lawndale from every area, from every person that's doing anything. If you're doing something with young people, if you're doing something with old people, if you're doing something with politicians, if you're doing something in your home, if you're doing something with your young people, if you're doing something in your school, if you're here tonight, that's just showing that North Lawndale is on the way to prosperity. It's growing, it's getting better, it's getting greater, and it's because of all the work that everybody is doing and because of the seeds that have been planted by the people from the past that have laid the foundation. One man plants, one man waters, but it's our job to let God give us the increase that we're going to have, that we have to have, that is going to come, that will be here. Last thing as I sit down, I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in 2020 because there's a lot of mobilization and meetings like this, Paul, with the 150th anniversary of North Lawndale means that we can come together. And when we come together, it's like from Soul Food. When we come together like a mighty fist, we can turn North Lawndale right side up, and we can be that beacon light that God has called us to be, that we're going to be, that we will be. But it's going to take all of us working together, doing the things that we do, and not being in competition with one another about the stuff that we do, but come together as one and turn this place upside down. God bless you.
1977, I met this little white boy, who was from Iowa, who graduated from Reading College. He came to my high school, and he started applying for a teacher position. Nothing was open, so he substituted, for a while. But along the way, he did a survey of the school. 1976, he did a survey of the school to see how many teachers in the school stayed in the community. Out of 150 teachers, he discovered that none stayed. He decided, as a little white boy, 22 years old, he decided that he wanted to move into my community. Now, of course, we was against that. I was an athlete, I was a wrestler, and they wouldn't let me play football because I was too small. At least that's what they told me. And they said it was an insurance matter. But I didn't believe that, so I still was part of the football team. I was the football manager / quarter boy. So I still got on the team. But what he did was that he moved into the community. He moved in the wrong area, first and foremost. He moved on 15th and Carey. And if anybody knows the history of North Lawndale in 60, 70, they'll know that the corner of 14th and Carey, 15th and Carey is the bucket of blood. He was in the Courtway building there, and he lived there for a minute. And then one day, which like all white folks do, well, I won't generalize, but as some white folks do, is that they come into our community with this superior complex, like they're going to teach us something. He came with it. He didn't admit it in the beginning, but he came with it that he was coming to teach us something. And so when he moved into the building, he went home one Christmas vacation, gone for 2 weeks. We had this green Chevy van that we traveled in everywhere. We did wrestling meets, football games, Wyn College. We did a bunch of things in this van, but he left in the front of the building. And when he got back, he discovered that the passenger side window was broken out. The spare tire was sitting in the front seat of the passenger side seat of the car. His neighbor, his landlord, summoned him to the car and said, look, call the police, because somebody had broken into your van. He called the police, and this was before the time of 911. Police came right away, and then they met him in front of the building and asked him, did he stay in the building? He said, yes, he did. And the police told him that your neighbors called the police on the young man who broke into your building, who stayed in the building also. And he said, get your tire, because we out of here. Now, he got to his apartment that evening, then he realized that he didn't come to teach this community thing. He realized that Dr. King's dream was a reality. That no matter what color you are, no matter what color, creed you are, you can help one another. And so his whole concept of our neighborhood changed that day. He started, he was part of this organization called FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He introduced this to us. And we began, to get involved with him in this when he moved off Carey, because I didn't come on Carey. My mom told me, don't come on Carey. I didn't come see him on Carey. I was like, you on your own. So when he moved on Cermak, then he moved eventually on Ogden Avenue. And he was fortunate enough that these two Polish guys were moving out because white flights were taking, they were on the move. And they were selling this building for $6,000. So he purchased this building that had a storefront and an apartment upstairs. He bought that for $6,000. We used the storefront, to create our youth center. And then we had Bible studies every week in this little storefront for a number of years. We couldn't compete with the high schools all over the city of Chicago. We was getting mocked, pretty much in everything. Football team was really good. But what happened was that we decided, we didn't have an athletic facility at our school, which was Farragut High School. And so we decided to pool our money together, which we didn't have much. We put together $1,300. We bought a universal weight machine on Ogden Avenue when nothing was there. And we put it in the front of the storefront, and that was the hook that started, mostly everything in terms of people being gravitated toward the building to be, to learn how to lift weights and also to learn Bible studies at the same time. And so one evening in 78, he asked us the question while we was having Bible study. He said, "Why don't you guys go to church in the neighborhood?" At that time, I was a teenager, and I decided, and I was against church. Because I got, I grew up with 9 brothers and sisters, and we was living, in a really deplorable situation, rats and roaches everywhere. And I was going to church. My mom gave me 50 cents, and I was like, I ain't getting God my 50 cents. So I would spend 45 cents on candy and gave God a nickel. Because I was saying, my sister and brother, we would say, look, the pastor's driving off in Cadillacs, they eating well, looking good, and it was churchism. And I go home and then nothing was in the cupbearer. And so we said, what, we turned off the church and we began to challenge him that night about why we didn't go to church. Because, I didn't have the clothes to wear. I didn't have the money to put in church. All these things was a source of ridicule for us as kids. And so one of us, it was 8 of us downstairs, 7 girls upstairs having Bible study with his wife. And we decided while we were downstairs, why don't we just start church right here in this storefront? Nothing was on Ogden Avenue. It was a car dealership mecca at that time. And he didn't answer us right away. He said to pray about it. We knew that meant no. So we prayed anyway because we've been together for about 2 years. So we prayed about it. He went upstairs to his wife. And he began to share with her that the guys, we were talking about starting a church, but before he can get it out, his wife said the girls, 7 girls, they were talking about the same thing, basically. And so we came back that next week. That's how Lawndale Christian Community Church started in 1978 on March the 3rd. The first Bible study we ever had came out of Acts chapter 2, verse 42. That we brought everything to the apostles' feet. And then across the street, we had this big old ugly building that the city was about to tear down, which was a dealership, a car dealership. And then we sought ways to get money from the city or from any fund or any bank, but it redlined us. They were like, look here, because of the assassination, they redlined many areas in our community. And so what happened with that, we got some incredible people to help us out, which actually was a med student named Dr. Jones. He was a med student. His name was Art Jones. And he had a father who was a doctor. And then he began to help us out writing grants. And then Chicago Community Trust gave us $150,000. And we bought the building right across the street where we have our health center at now. And like Phil said, we went in that building, had no clue about what to do. We just went in and started tearing things down, tearing stuff up. And I'm quite sure we tore some pipes up that we shouldn't have been torn up. And so that was the beginning of everything. But the church started, and that was the root of everything that started on Ogden Avenue, which was desolate. Tumbleweeds would roll down there. And so the health center started in 1984, and it started with one doctor, with Dr. Jennings Rossbach. Dr. Jones was still a med student. And then nobody would come to see a doctor because they was afraid, because at that time, Jim Jones' situation occurred. And then you talking about coming up there to see a white man. Jim Jones had already killed 900 and some people. And here this white boy coming up on Ogden Avenue talking about coming to church with me. And people was like, no way. And then he got married to a white girl from Indiana. We called her Lily White. But the beauty of it is that we loved her. And we loved Coach. We didn't want to call him pastor. And he didn't want to be called pastor. And that's why we still call him Coach today. Because when we ordained him as 15 high school kids on March in March of 1978. That was his ordination. Then he went on to school to take care of everything else. And then from there, everything started in an amazing way. And then people started flooding to the health center. It began to grow expeditiously, and then we were able, at this time now, to have 6 sites. We have an urgent care. We have a site out south. We have a site in the Holman Square. We have a site in West Garfield, and along with Breakthrough Ministry. And my wife is one of the medical providers. And so then the development corporation. Now, mind you, also at the same time, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, but one of the things, that we discovered as a church, as a small church, we had a listening meeting. We had 25 people to show up. We was hoping that more people would show up. 25 people showed up, and the whole purpose of that, as little kids, we wanted to know what the community wanted. We didn't want to just throw things out there at the community like we get all the time in my community, is that people put something up and then tell you need it. So we didn't want that. So we had a listening meeting, and the people told us what they needed. They needed quality health care, affordable health care, in a Christian environment. And so that's how the health center, and then so we came up with this concept, a felt need. We want to meet the felt needs of the people in our community. So all these things I talk about right now, they came out of a felt need. And so the Development Corporation, of course, it came out of a felt need. In 1987, we bought a building for $40,000. It was a 22-unit building. We gutted it out, and we turned it to affordable housing. Now, we oversee about $50 million worth of property in the community. But that was out of a felt need. The Hope House Ministry, Les Stanley was talking about, he and I co-founded Hope House Ministry in 1995. And now I'm the sole executive director of the Hope House Ministry. It's a 40-bed intense discipling facility for guys who are struggling with drugs and guys that desire to come home from prison and have a place. Because if you don't have a place when you come out of prison, I correspond with correctional centers all over Illinois. I talk with field service agents throughout all these places. And then I tell them to give me that guy. When a guy writes me, I call them and I say, give me that guy. I don't give a jack. Give him to me. Because you're going to violate him in jail, and you're going to continue to get all the money off his head. Hope House is free. We have job training, through Lou Malnati's restaurant, which help us out, to provide jobs for these guys. The health center helps us to provide. The first job a Hope House guy ever got is through the health center. And he was a 5-time felon. And now he's the HIV case manager the last 20 years. See, I look at Hope House Ministry as I look at the book of Onesimus. Onesimus. When you see the book in Philemon, Onesimus, the story of Onesimus, that's Hope House in its essence right there. Lawndale Christian Community Church started out our motto. It comes right out of Matthew chapter 22, 34 and following, that we want to try to love the Lord God with all our heart, our mind, our soul, and our strength, and then to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, And I don't mean to talk about or criticize churches, but I struggle with churches that love the Lord. Love the Lord. But then when it comes down to me, they can't love me. Or they can't love the likes of me. But we wanted to be a church that's different. We wanted to be a church for the unchurched people. So the Development Corporation came out of a felt need. I needed housing. Rest and roach was running through my mattresses. And it was horrible growing up. And through the Development Corporation, now I have a home. Through the Development Corporation, I have a home. And many other people in my community have a home because of the Development Corporation. The fitness center came up out of a felt need. We was doing meetings, and we was looking at the charts. We was looking at, the data. The diabetes we were still struggling with that. Obesity was still struggling with that. And so 12 years ago, somebody just raised their hand. Why don't we just open up a fitness center? We're like, well, we ain't never did fitness center before, but we ain't never did nothing before. And that's how everything pretty much came up, So we took half of the health center building, we took half of the parking lot, we cut it off, and then we built onto the fitness, to the health center, and then we put weights, put aerobic equipment, and then treadmills and everything in there. And then all of a sudden, wow, the community responded in an amazing way. And then we was fortunate enough that when Obama won the presidency, he gave us $10 million of stimulus money, and then we took a plot of land from Hamlin to Ridgeway, leveled it, and then we put up a wellness center where we have the fitness center now, And then we have women's health. We have pediatric health and dental there. So that, is from there. Then we have a senior building to assist and help with seniors, that are struggling physically, emotionally. They on Hamlin, they can come play games, they can come hang out, and they can see their doctor at the same time. And then the farm is on Ogden. We have a farm on Ogden that we take to Lapa, and then we use their poop, so to help grow the vegetables in our community. And then after the Talapa's finished with all that, we sell the fish. But all this is affordable. Nothing is done on Lawndale, on Ogden Avenue, has been motivated by money. Nothing. Hope House is free. Of course, we do things on a sliding scale. When we first started the health center, everything was done out of the book of Leviticus. Glean if you can't afford your medicine. Glean if you can't afford, to see a doctor. If you're able to do anything, we don't want to take your pride away from you. So these are the things, that we're part of at Lawndale Christian Community Church, and I can talk I could talk forever about, God's grace, about what we do on Ogden Avenue. I want to thank you all for allowing me to be here today, and I appreciate you. Thank you.